A new great American masterpiece, a monumental symphony, and an American epic built to weather the ages. Coming in as a 4-hour epic, The Brutalist might be the most talked about movie as 2024 comes to a close. With hopes of a Best Actor, Supporting Actor, and Picture run ahead, I finally got to see The Brutalist, and somehow, someway, it delivers on everything. The Brutalist follows Laszlo Toth as he rebuilds his life coming to America from Hungary. His marriage, career, and everything on the line, he's on his own in a strange new country, recognized of his talents by the great industrialists. Before we get into over 98% of you guys who watch these videos aren't subscribed, so if you don't want to see more reviews, hit that button. Both always skin more time. Let's get into it. Right out of the gate, we have to talk about this insane runtime. Coming in at 3 hours and 55 minutes, this is probably the longest film I've ever seen in theaters. I do have to say, I think the first half is way stronger than the second half, but that could also just be my hype going in. There is a 15-minute intermission pretty much at the halfway point exactly, and I kind of just wanted the intermission to be over with because I was sitting there with 6 minutes left and I just wanted more. And that says a lot for a film that's so long. I just wanted to be put right back into it. I also think I could have watched 30 more minutes of this film, which I'll get into later in the video. This film was reportedly made for under $10 million, which is the craziest thing I've heard about any film of this scale or size, but it kind of makes sense once you understand what the story is going for. While I was watching the movie, I couldn't help but think, what if this was told non-linearly and then kind of built up to something at the end, similar to a movie that came out last year, which I'll mention later. But at the end of the day, I did like how it was told. It makes Laszlo's journey perfectly personable. I'm super glad it wasn't non-linear, but it was kind of just a vision I had near the end of the film when everything was wrapping up. And I did want to mention, I think you can tell that every moment of this film feels urgent. It might be a difficult rewatch, but I think only time will aid this movie because it's so personal and so lengthy. It's so opposing to the bounds of modern filmmaking that I think people will appreciate every little detail.
This was an incredibly difficult film to make. I'm very emotional today because I've been working on it for 7 years, and it felt urgent every day of the better part of a decade.
The main thing I have to talk about here is just how haunting this film is. But before I do that, through and through, what makes this movie work through the very long runtime is the absolutely perfect performances. Now, there have been rave reviews about every single one of the performances. I think the supporting performances are just great, but I don't think they're outstanding by any means. Guy Pearce plays Harrison LeVan Burns Sr., and I think he is really awesome in this role. He truly does embody it. He doesn't have the most screen time, but when he's on the screen, he is very essential to the story, which makes him really exciting to watch. And then you have Felicity Jones, who plays Erzsébet Toth, and she's really only in the film for the second half of it. I expect her to have much bigger of a role since she has been in talks for Best Supporting Actress nominations. Now, for me personally, I thought this was a good performance. I don't think it's anything mind-blowing though. Now, obviously I can't mention every single performance, but I do want to say, talking about the film as a whole, not one performance misses a beat. And that's insane to do when you're next to Adrian Brody, who plays Laszlo Toth, who's putting on an absolutely generational performance. Not only is it, in my opinion, the best performance of the year, not only is it one of the best performances of the 2020 so far, but in my opinion, it's one of the best performances I think I've ever seen in my lifetime. It's this performance that exudes rage, but on a very subtle level, especially when you start to kind of uncover the themes of evil and haunting in this film as the film goes on. He really just starts off as this very ambitious immigrant who doesn't want to be begging for things. He wants to earn everything that he has. And you see this evolution of how he just becomes pretty much borderline psychopathic in his work, his family life, and everything in between. And it all kind of just crumbles underneath him after you kind of see how everything wraps up in his architectural engineering life. I absolutely love not only the evolution of this performance, but just specific moments. There is a true palpability to his performance, and there's one scene specifically where he meets one of his friends at the train when he first arrives to America, and that is genuinely one of the most heartbreaking, but also super inspirational inspirational sequences that I've seen in a very long time in a film. And it's crazy because it's literally like 10 to 20 minutes into the film and you really have no context on this character. Adrien Brody just plays him so perfectly that you're instantly attached to not only this relationship, but wherever Adrien Brody's Laszlo Toth goes from here. Now, thematically is where this film surprised me the most because it is purely about the evil of man, which I didn't really expect. I mean, I went in knowing the basic synopsis, but nothing more, nothing less. And it was kind of intimidating going into this super long film, not knowing much about what it's trying to accomplish. And as the runtime goes on, you truly do feel like, oh shit, like these are bad people that you wanted to side with. Now, this is a good and bad. For the majority of the runtime, this thematic element of evil is more so an undertone. Like you obviously know that's what they're getting at, but it's not blatantly given to you. But then in the final, I'd say 30 minutes of this movie, the parallels start to get super duper on the nose. And that was where I started to get super frustrated with it. We were getting it handed to us on a silver platter, whereas the whole entire movie, I understood what was going on and I didn't need that just thrown in my face. But on the other side of it, throwing it in your face works in the favor of what the story is trying to tell. That's why I'm kind of torn on it. Now, aside from the thematic overhaul that happens by the end of the film, another movie that I think a lot of people compare this to is last year's Oppenheimer. Now, I'm not really trying to compare the filmmaker's intent behind these films because I love both of these movies for very different reasons. But the parallels in how they execute emotion and fuel the audience interactions felt very similar to me. Going into The Brutalist, I expected it to be super grand, like Oppenheimer. And in most technical ways, which I'll touch on later, it was super different in good and bad ways. And the reason I think the ending felt so flat to me, in addition to all of these thematic problems I had by the end, I think it's because unlike Oppenheimer, the full picture isn't accounted for in the epilogue of the film. The entire runtime's impact trips on its own 2 feet because of this very short and unurgent wrap-up. Now, the wrap-up feels real enough. It feels like, okay, we did all of this just to have this little part of your life be remembered. I'm saying this and this because I don't want to give away too much about the film, but I think you understand what I'm saying. I'll talk more about the ending in just a second here, but it was just really frustrating to see this film build up in such a grand yet personal way and then kind of throw it all away with the very, very quick and honestly unurgent wrap up. And I'm only saying this because again, I could have watched another 30 minutes of this film. Another massive talk of the town with The Brutalist is how it is an absolute technical masterclass, and I can tell you guys, it is. The score is so much more subtle than I expected, but abso-fucking-lutely brilliant. Me and my friend were tapping our fingers to the score the entire time. The evolution of the technical elements are so brilliant, but the score itself just evolves like its own character, and that's just not something I went into the film expecting. Now, this was also shot on 35mm, which a lot of people are talking about. It's being upscaled to 70mm, which I think is really, really cool. Now, on a visual level, I really think the film look only works to put you in the position of these characters, more of an immersion thing, but I also think that's why the aspect ratio works perfectly with this film. Circling back to the Oppenheimer comparison, I think Oppenheimer works in such a big scale way because of how the frame is used. There is so much always going on aside from the main subject in the frame, whereas in The Brutalist, everything is not only so close up, but everything is focused on one singular action. And the aspect ratio not only aids that, but also makes you feel a lot more claustrophobic in every single conversation, piece of action, etc. And the final thing I want to talk about is the ending of the film. I'm not going to give away any spoilers at all whatsoever, but there is a massive tonal shift which really left a sour taste in my mouth. The epilogue overall wasn't unnecessary by any means, but it really undermines the personal yet large scale of this film, which really pissed me off. I was so invested in everything that was constantly happening, and this movie moves at such a brisk pace that even pre-epilogue, right before, there's still so much happening that you want to know a resolution to, and then you cut to black, have an epilogue that's maybe 7 to 10 minutes, and then it's over. Again, this comes in 3 hours and 55 minutes, and I still could have watched another 30 minutes. All I wanted to see was more of this character. I wanted to understand more of the psyche, more of how his legacy impacts him as a person, but rather than that, it was kind of just brushed past. At the end of the day, The Brutalist was exactly what I expected, but also surprised me in so many ways. It's massive in its scale, but super personal on its storytelling. It's by far the longest film I've ever seen in theaters, but it absolutely flew by. Overall, I'm gonna give The Brutalist a 9 out of 10. If you've seen or want to check out The Brutalist, let me know what you think of it in the comments down below. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.